Crucial Conversations. Book by Carrie Patterson, Joseph Grenny, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler. Chapter 2. What Not to Ask. In the previous chapter, we examined a method of conflict resolution that doesn't actually resolve anything. And in this chapter, we'll learn about how the wrong questions can destroy the conversation you want to have. According to the authors, there are 4 unique types of bad questions, and we're going to take a close look at each of them. First up on our list of offenders is the leading question. Leading questions are the death of conversations for a couple of reasons. For starters, if you ask a leading question that can also be answered with yes or no, 9 times out of 10, people will simply go with the yes or no answer because it's the easiest option. Even if they don't agree with what you said, they may go along with it just to save themselves from a longer or more intimate conversation. But on the rare occasions when people do respond to your leading questions, they can be dangerous for another reason, whether you mean it in a harmful way or not. For example, if your question invites someone else to distrust themselves or their opinions, this can sow unnecessary seeds of doubt. This can occur whether you're asking something as harmless as, "But you hate ice cream, don't you?" Or, "You didn't really see that woman get assaulted, did you?" Because you're asserting a viewpoint and attributing it to them. Some people may internalize this to an unhealthy degree. Perhaps, for example, they were on the verge of changing their minds about something or trying something new. But if they hear their own opinion restated by you in the form of a leading question, that question takes on a new level of value and plausibility. Perhaps they were certain that they did indeed witness a sexual assault, but if you imply that that's impossible and insinuate that deep down they must know it's impossible too, many people will change their tune and say, "You're right, I couldn't have seen that." That's why leading questions aren't allowed in most ethical interrogations, and they shouldn't be allowed in your conversations either. Vague questions are next on the list because they're also a repeat offender. Vague questions are exactly what they sound like. Questions that are too open-ended and undefined for any real clarity to be achieved through conversation. A good example of a vague question might be, "How do you feel about war?" Because there have been multitudinous wars throughout history, some of which have wreaked horrific destruction, and some of which have saved the world. That question is overwhelmingly vague. Next up are negative questions. Negative questions are not questions that are negative in tone or questions that don't sound very friendly. Instead, negative questions are those which are confusing in their organization because they rely heavily on the use of double negatives. For example, a negative question might say something like, "So, am I not correct in assuming that you have never not said you don't support America?" Would you instantly understand the meaning of that question? Or would you need to run it over in your mind a few times first, carefully unpacking the confusing verbiage? The latter is true for pretty much everybody, so you can see why negative questions are problematic. And last but not least, we have compound questions. Just as a compound sentence is a sentence with more than one subject or predicate, a compound question is a question which has more than one part. For example, if you were angry at your teenage son for sneaking out of the house and stealing money from your wallet, you might ask a compound question like, "Where did you go and how much money did you take?" Although they might not sound too confusing to read, compound questions can feel very confusing if they're being fired at you in an accusatory manner. As a result, most people will struggle to keep up with both parts of the question, and are likely to only answer the one part they can remember. For example, even if he intended to be honest and answer both of your questions, your son might get overwhelmed and only tell you the truth about where he went, completely forgetting the part about the money. So, as you can imagine, from the perspective of both the asker and the recipient, compound questions are a bad idea.